Hello, my name is Stan Copeland, and I'm the pastor of Lover's Lane United Methodist Church in the North Texas Conference. And this is part 2 of our conversation with our millennial colleagues here today. And I think you'll find this discussion very stimulating, as you did the session 1. I want to ask another question. I want to ask, our mission of the church is making disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. What are some of the challenges that you see right now in making disciples of people in your own generation? And what do we need to do to reach your generation and the generations upcoming? What do we need to do if we're trying to envision a new expression of Methodism?
Right. Payton and I have this conversation quite a bit about how to reach our own peer group. And so there are so many people who tell us often that they would hate to have to come into ministry at this time, right? But this is a real gift, and Ricky talked about this a little bit, about how we come to Scripture. And I think that's the real invitation. So I don't want to think of it as a challenge, but really an opportunity, because this is a real opportunity to do with the text what our predecessors have not done often, right? To really deal with the text through different lenses, right? Because the Scriptures, look at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? They're coming from different times, different contexts, and they come up, and they're talking about the same story in different ways. Right? And so we don't come to Scripture without tradition, without reason, without experience, and coming to the Scriptures in that way, dealing with them critically so that we can excavate something new and actually immerse people into the text so that their lived experience is seen through the lens of the text, right? And vice versa is an opportunity in which we're able to reach our peer group, right? Coming up to the Scriptures in a different way. We are an analytical people. An analytical group of people who don't just take anything at face value, right? We need to know what's going on. We need to know how we live into this thing. We need to know what's going on and who God is in this moment, right? And so I think that it's not so much a challenge, but really an opportunity to reach someone new. The other thing is we don't use, I believe, as the church, technology well enough. Right? And so I think it's important that we're doing this, talking on camera, because we can put this on social media. It can trend. It can go places that we've never gone before. And I don't know if we're really using the opportunities that are at our disposal that are free. We always get in the trappings of, oh, we can't afford it, right? But Facebook is free. You can Facebook Live anything, and I think that this is an opportunity for us to actually live into the 21st century with things and tools that are already at hand. And so I think the tension or the challenge in ministry of making disciples for of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world gets sticky for a lot of our elders because we're going into churches that are 3 or 4 times our age. And so there's a culture gap there, but I think it's a real opportunity to actually talk about it, teach it, and figure out how we go on from there. But I think we have a real opportunity, not so much a challenge, but an opportunity to reach people who are constantly being immersed in the waters of social media and often being inundated with things that are labeled fake news. But we have an opportunity to counter that. So I don't think of it as a challenge, but a real opportunity because this is our life every day. And so we have to be entrepreneurial in that way.
So one of the opportunities that I think that I find in my own ministry is that a lot of time with the younger people that I'm encountering, my age and younger for the most part, they have already made up our minds about a lot of justice issues before they come to Scripture, before we come to Scripture. So there's a different approach generationally to even how we wrestle with these things. So I have young people who are coming through the doors of my church and saying, but my friend is this, and claims that, and I like my friend, and I love my friend, and I trust my friend. So where in the Bible does it say that my friend is valued? And I think that is a really interesting opportunity about working with young people in particular, is that I would say probably in some of the older generations, that's a little flipped. You kind of went to scripture, you figured out what it has to say about human sexuality or race or gender, and then you make your assumptions based on what scripture says. And I would say a lot of times when I'm encountering young people, it's the flip. They figure that out in school, they figured it out in theater, band, math class, whatever it is. They've already reconciled this, and they're just coming back to the church and saying, why does this matter? Why does this book matter to me? Because what I know of the world is not what my parents and my grandparents and people before me have been saying for generations. And so it's a really interesting opportunity to be intentional about the way that we speak of the gospel, in which God says over and over, love, 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 love. And we're missing the mark, I think, on the way that we excavate scripture when we don't take that message first and foremost as intentional. Because we're going to run out of people real fast if we can't figure out it's already being done.
Yeah, I know all of you have come through the theology room of the Board of Ministry.
Yes.
What a joy. When you do, what a joy.
Our favorite room.
An opportunity.
It really is.
And you talk about the Western Quadrilateral, right? And the right answer is you start with the scripture as the foundation, and experience, tradition, and reason. And yet, what you're saying, Jenna, is oftentimes those who we're trying to reach are coming at it from experience. This is my life, and this is what's blowing up on me.
And I think you can put scripture, you can help people find it where we get to that primacy of scripture,
Right.
but we have to be shown. Yeah. And that's not happening, I think, in the local church.
That's a very good insight, though. How people come to us, or how we interact with them through the relevance of their experience is so important.
As she was speaking, I was thinking about this text about the 10 lepers, right? And the text says that the lepers met Jesus, right? And Jesus talks to them where they met him, right? And so I think often we're not meeting folks where they are. We're giving them what we want to give them, as opposed to actually welcoming the sum total of who they've become, and then figuring out how we get to where they want to go. But really and truly, we've not really started at that foundational level of love, right? And the text says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, and your soul. The fullness of who you are, love God. And that's where we've got to meet up, right?
Yeah.
So,
one of the things I'm excited about in listening to you, not just in this setting, but, coming through the board and all of that, is that it seems like that y'all really get the fact that the new church has got to be a church, not saying come and get it, but going out into the world where people are, different expressions of church. Ricky, you're in a setting much like that, where we're going to see different expressions of church through this generation like we've never seen before. And I would hope that it would result in making disciples of Jesus Christ and truly transformation in lives and in the world like we've never seen before. You want to address that?
I just say, man, that's what it is to be Wesleyan, right? That's at the heart of who we are as followers of these two crazy brothers, John and Charles Wesley. Like what Wesley said, these little experiments in practical divinity, right? That was always going to the forefront. Wesley's people are out in the coal mines, they can't get to church. Let's go to the coal mines. People are out in the fields, let's go to the fields. There are kids who don't have education, let's get kids in the classroom to teach children, right? It was always, the Methodism, this expansion of Methodism in America, in colonial and the early days of America, was always at the frontier of the circuit riders who were out there literally on the edge of what we've historically called the civilized world, right? But on the edge of what we knew as working, right? What worked was not to build 4 walls of a church and buy a nice piece of land and get the building paid off and get X amount of butts in the pews, but what worked was going to the people and engaging them in a way and in a language that they spoke, right? This is what happens at Pentecost. The Spirit gives them the ability to speak the good news of the life, death, resurrection of Jesus and what that means for our lives in a language that each and every person could understand for themselves. And I think that's our challenge right now, is what we're wrestling with, is that by and large, our history as the United Methodist Church has been a colonial-centric, U.S.-centric model. If we only speak the good news of the language of Jesus Christ in terms of the United States church can understand, and then if you happen to be in West Africa or the Philippines or Germany or Eastern Europe, then you can figure out how to translate it for yourself, but we're not too concerned about that. And the irony is that it's that same system that has stuck us now in the inability to contextually speak the good news of the language of the gospel in our setting that's so different from our brothers and sisters, our siblings around the world. And that's the question I think we're wrestling with, is to be Methodist, to be United Methodist, must we all speak the same language to proclaim the good news of Jesus? Or, as has been true of our history, can we bless and free people to speak that in tongues that we might not understand or we might not even recognize as a legitimate language, and yet which people are hearing anyways? Can we bless and free people to do ministry in those contexts?
Yeah, I think historically the issue with the church universal has been the spirit of elitism. Even in Scripture, we just see how certain groups of people feel that they're better than someone else. Or in the 80s and 90s, we really had this concretization of what it means to be Christian. So in certain, so for Pentecostalism, you didn't wear pants if you were a woman because you weren't Christian if you did that. And there are all these things that we hold on to traditionally that we probably were all brought up thinking that we had to be this way or think this way or believe these things in order to hold on to the cause of Christ. And I think what we're seeing now is that it's being expanded upon. And there's some tension there because it's uncomfortable. But in order for us to really understand the message of the gospel in the Bible, I think we have to go back to the ethos of the people who the Bible is written about. And the ancient Near Eastern people, their ethos and worldview of just how they live their life does not correlate with American idealism. We are very much indoctrinated to believe that it's about getting for me and nothing else. That I'm supposed to put myself first, but they were indoctrinated to say it's we over me. And we've definitely lost that in America. And until we get back to the root of what it means to be selfless, to be like Jesus, who was one of those ancient Near Eastern people who believed that way, who thought it was normal to host a stranger because you thought that you were entertaining an angel of God. And so we've gotten to this place where it's about my intellect, it's about what I look like, how much money I have, and what degrees and I have behind my name, when that has nothing to do with it. And I think one of the biggest issues historically with the church is we think we have to have all the answers. Only God has the answers, all of the answers. And perhaps the most boldest phrase that I can say as a messenger of the gospel is, I don't know, but I'm willing to journey with you and pray with you and love you through this journey of life together.
Well, this conversation is continuing on Methodist Sojourners, and we hope that this has stimulated a lot of great discussion, and we hope that you'll join this conversation. And I want to thank each of you. This has been really, really insightful and great, and the church is in really good hands today and going forward.